There's a moment most of us remember, even if we try not to. A moment when someone's words didn't just hurt our feelings, they lingered. They echoed in our minds long after the conversation ended. You replayed it in the shower, in the car, just before falling asleep. You wondered if you were too sensitive. You wondered if maybe it was your fault. And slowly, without even noticing, your energy began to drain whenever you were around that person. You started preparing for interactions like you were preparing for battle, choosing your words carefully, smiling cautiously, bracing yourself. That's how toxicity often begins. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with a quiet erosion. Toxic people don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper, they guilt you gently. They disguise control as concern. They wrap criticism in jokes. They make you question your own memory. And before you even realize it, you're not just dealing with a difficult personality. You're managing your own shrinking spirit. The first shift in dealing with toxic people begins in a place most people avoid: radical clarity, not about them, but about what's happening inside you. When someone consistently leaves you feeling small, anxious, or confused, your body already knows what your mind is trying to rationalize. There's a heaviness in your chest before you even see their name on your phone. There's a tightness in your jaw during conversations. Instead of dismissing that instinct, you start listening to it. You stop gaslighting yourself about the impact they have on you. Clarity is powerful because it breaks denial. And denial is exactly what toxicity feeds on. Once you see clearly, you stop trying to win them over. This is where many people lose years of their lives, trying to be understood by someone who has no real interest in understanding, trying to prove their worth to someone who benefits from them feeling unworthy. Toxic people often thrive on reaction. They feed on emotional engagement, whether it's anger, tears, or desperate explanations. And the more you try to fix the dynamic through persuasion, the deeper you step into their arena. The second shift is emotional non-participation. You don't argue every accusation. You don't defend every distortion. You don't explain yourself endlessly. You choose calm responses, short answers, or sometimes silence. Not because you are weak, but because you are strategic. You understand that not every battle deserves your breath. But make no mistake, emotional non-participation doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you choose not to hand your feelings to someone who has proven they will misuse them. And then comes something harder: boundaries. Boundaries are not speeches, they are behaviors. They are not threats, they are decisions. A boundary might look like leaving the room when the yelling begins. It might look like not answering a midnight call that you know will spiral into drama. It might sound like calmly and firmly saying, "I'm not comfortable with that," and actually meaning it. The power of a boundary isn't in how loudly you declare it. It's in how consistently you uphold it. Toxic people will test boundaries. They will push, guilt, mock, or escalate because boundaries threaten the access they once had to you, and that's when you discover something uncomfortable but freeing. You cannot control their reaction. You can only control your consistency, and consistency builds self-respect. There's another quiet shift that often goes unnoticed. You stop taking the bait. Toxic dynamics rely on emotional hooks, a sarcastic comment designed to provoke, a subtle comparison meant to make you compete, a rumor planted just to see if you'll defend yourself. When you recognize the hook, you can choose not to bite. Imagine the power in calmly saying, "I'm not interested in arguing about this," and actually walking away. It feels unnatural at first. Your nervous system wants resolution. It wants to prove. But over time, you realize something profound. Peace is far more satisfying than being right. Still, boundaries and calm responses are only part of the story. There is also internal work, because toxic relationships don't just drain energy, they distort identity. You begin doubting your memory, questioning your reactions. wondering if you are too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding. One of the most powerful ways to deal with toxicity is reclaiming your narrative. This might mean journaling your experiences honestly, talking to someone outside the dynamic, hearing your story reflected back to you without manipulation. When someone says, "That's not okay," and you feel your shoulders drop because finally someone sees it too, that validation doesn't make you dependent, it reorients you. It reminds you that your experience is real. Another shift comes when you start understanding patterns instead of personalities. Toxic people often repeat cycles: charm, tension, explosion, apology, temporary calm, and then the cycle begins again. When you stop focusing only on their words and start observing the pattern, illusions begin to break. You stop being hypnotized by apologies that are never followed by change. You stop clinging to the charming version of them that appears only after damage is done. You see the rhythm, and once you see the rhythm, you can step out of the dance. Stepping out isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's gradual detachment. You invest less emotionally. You share less vulnerable information. You lower expectations. You stop seeking emotional nourishment from someone who has already shown they cannot provide it. This isn't coldness, it's recalibration. You begin placing your emotional investments where they grow instead of where they decay, and then there's the courage to choose distance. Distance isn't always physical, sometimes it's energetic. You reduce contact, you shorten visits, you decline invitations without long, elaborate excuses. In some cases, especially when the toxicity crosses into abuse or chronic manipulation, distance becomes literal. You leave the environment. You change jobs. You step away from family gatherings. That decision can feel terrifying. Toxic relationships often come with guilt woven into them. After everything I've done for you, you're overreacting. You're abandoning me. But sometimes survival requires discomfort. Sometimes growth demands separation. What makes this so complicated is that toxic people are not villains wearing black cloaks. They are human. They have wounds. They have traumas. And empathy can trap you. You start excusing harmful behavior because you understand their pain. But empathy without boundaries turns into self-betrayal. You can care about someone's wounds without volunteering to bleed for them. There's also a quiet, often overlooked practice: strengthening your life outside the toxic dynamic, building friendships that feel safe, pursuing interests that remind you who you are, taking care of your body so your nervous system can finally relax. Toxic interactions keep you in fight or flight mode. Your body stays on alert. When you create joy and stability elsewhere, you rebuild internal safety, and that internal safety changes how you respond. You're no longer desperate for validation from the very source that destabilizes you. And perhaps the most profound shift of all is forgiveness. But not in the way most people imagine. Forgiveness is not permission. It is not reconciliation. It is not pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is releasing the constant replay in your mind. It is choosing not to let bitterness define your future relationships. It is quietly saying, "I will not let this experience turn me into someone hardened and closed." Forgiveness protects your heart, not theirs. But let's be honest, none of this is linear. There will be days when you fall back into arguments, days when you over-explain, days when you doubt yourself all over again. Healing from toxic dynamics is not a straight line, it's a spiral. You revisit the same lessons at deeper levels, each time with a little more awareness, a little more strength, and one day you'll notice something subtle but powerful. Their words don't hit the same way anymore. The emotional charge is weaker. You don't rehearse conversations in your head as much. You don't feel the need to defend yourself to everyone. You've built something inside, an internal anchor. Dealing with toxic people isn't about winning against them. It's about not losing yourself. It's about understanding that your peace is not negotiable. Your clarity is not up for debate. Your boundaries are not requests. They are conditions for access. And access to you is a privilege, not an entitlement. When you truly internalize that, something shifts. You stop asking, how do I make them treat me better? And you start asking, why am I tolerating treatment that diminishes me? That question is uncomfortable. It forces deep self-reflection. It may reveal patterns from childhood. It may uncover fears of abandonment. But it also opens the door to transformation. Because the truth is, toxic people exist in every sphere. Workplaces, friendships, families, relationships. You cannot eliminate them from the world, but you can change your relationship to them. You can refuse to participate in cycles that exhaust you. You can choose self-respect over approval. You can build a life so grounded that manipulation has nowhere to land. And in that grounded space, you realize something deeply empowering. You are not responsible for fixing someone who refuses to grow. You are responsible for protecting the version of you that is trying to. When you walk away from toxicity, or even when you simply stop feeding it, you may feel guilt at first. You may feel lonely. But slowly, peace begins to replace chaos. Your thoughts grow quieter. Your laughter becomes more natural. Your shoulders relax. You rediscover who you were before you started shrinking just to survive. And that rediscovery isn't loud. It's gentle. It feels like coming home after a very long journey. It feels like breathing fully again. So when you find yourself facing toxicity, whether it's subtle manipulation or open hostility, remember this: your calm is strength. Your boundaries are strength. Your distance can be strength. And your refusal to lose yourself is the strongest move you will ever make. Because in the end, dealing with toxic people isn't about mastering them. It's about mastering your response, reclaiming your peace, and choosing a life where your energy is spent building, loving, and growing, rather than constantly defending your right to exist exactly as you are. And that choice, quiet as it may seem, changes everything.